Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright, hello friends and welcome to another weekly wrap up, and oh boy, we have some fun and anticipated reads to talk about this week. April is going so well. I don't know if you guys check out my counter behind me, but I've been using this since near the beginning of the year and I love it. It's so fun. And yes, I'm at 114 books so far for the year, which is really cool. That's about halfway, almost halfway to my reading goal, because I did lower my reading goal this year so that I maybe didn't feel as much pressure. And then, well, as you all know, with all the fanfics I've been addicted to, it's still been rolling on pretty good. This last week, I announced 2 different readathons that'll be happening in May, which is exciting. And yeah, we had tax day. My accountant ended up filing an extension, not of my doing, but of like she's backed up. So that wasn't the funnest thing ever. But I've just been anxiously waiting. And then it was like, just kidding, nothing's ready yet. And I'm just like, ugh. Whatever. But at least I did my part, and you know, that's not my fault how that went down. But anyway, before we get into the 8 different things we're going to talk about this week, that's right, 8 of them. Real quickly, I want to say a warm welcome to a new patron, Alana. Alana joined this last week, and welcome, my friend. I'm so happy to have you here. I hope you enjoy the weekly wrap up and all the videos that are coming your way and all the extra content over on the Patreon. I always have that link down below, and that is the quickest and easiest way to start supporting my channel. If you want to check that out over there, or you can even like this video, hype this video, send this to someone who you want to share my reviews with. Anything like that, that really helps out the channel here. So let's get into what I read this week. So first up, I finished Bluebird Gold by Devney Perry, and I was actually really happy that one of my patrons picked this as an annotated read, because I had Bluebird Gold on my TBR of the month that it came out, but it wasn't one that I got an ARC or an ALC of, and as you guys know, if I don't get an ARC or an ALC, sometimes it ends up getting pushed. I mean, often it ends up getting pushed because I don't have as much urgency to read it. But I was really interested in this because there was a few key things that had me intrigued about it. Is that this is almost, we're almost there. I know, and I'm saying this about myself too, guys. We're almost at the point of a like historical suspense. Because this was set in 1983. I know, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just saying, they say with historicals, you want to be about like 50 years behind, and it's getting close. Let's just say that. But anyway, this is a suspense romance. The romance was very important to the story, was very central. But it does really focus on a mystery, a bit of some break-ins and suspenses going on, and I think that it being set in 1983 really made it, how do I word this, made some of the things in here more believable than they ever could have been if it was a modern romance, particularly the technology, right? Like, we're at the point now that the person in this, just who was the baddie, would have never gotten away with this to the point that they did if we had modern, like, security cameras, alarms, you know, better technology. Though it does take place in rural Montana, and there are some places there that maybe it still could have worked. But the fact that it is 1983 and it means those technologies are either wildly expensive or just weren't possible at all, definitely made the suspend of disbelief a bit easier for me. I'll tell you what the story's about in a second. But really, the only thing that held this story back for me was the reveal of who that baddie was and what they, like, I liked how it was a surprise. Like, I truly had no idea who was doing this. So, points to Devney Perry for that. I truly had no clue. It wasn't who the person was, I guess that was a problem. It's how it wrapped up. It very much had a wrap up that was just like, okay, this is why this person was doing these awful things. And then it was over. So that's kind of that thing where it's like, yes, you can totally surprise your readers with who did it. But if you didn't set enough clues, or you didn't make them feel like they could have guessed who it was or been in on it, I think you also lose people, because then they're like, well, there was no chance for me to figure this out. And again, I would, I'd have to reread this now knowing who it was, and I'm sure those clues are there. So that's a delicate balance. The point is, that's a delicate balance, right? Like, in comparison, which I hate to do, but I'm going to the Catherine Cowles that I really loved just a couple weeks ago, I had no clue who the baddie was in that one. But it also was like a very satisfying reveal in a way, because it made so many more things make sense. The position of, I don't want to say a thing about that one because I love the surprise, but the position the bad person was in, I knew how they were able to stay one step ahead of everyone and control the situation. And in this one, it was kind of like, it almost felt like I don't want to call it a Scooby-Doo reveal because that's a little bit too much, but it just kind of felt like oh, well, meh. But on the positive side, I love the romance so much. So anyway, what was this about after I said I was going to get around to that? So this romance is between Cosi, I never heard it said because I had to read this one to annotate it, so I didn't have the benefit of the audiobook for this one. And Ilsa. And again, it takes place in 1983. Cosi is the sheriff in town. He's a single dad. He has a teenager. And then our heroine Ilsa, she is in town for what she plans to be just a few months, kind of cleaning up and deciding what to do with her father's cabin in Montana. So her father died recently, supposedly was an accident, that he fell off of his fishing boat and drowned. Maybe he had a medical incident or something, but he had drowned on his fishing boat, and he left this cabin. Now, he'd been trying to reconnect with her recently because she hadn't been to see him in quite a while. When she was young, she used to be transferred back and forth between the two. But again, remembering this is set in 1983, so the only time she spoke with her dad was, yes, there could be letters, but there was a set phone call she would have on Sunday nights with her dad. We're talking landline, have to be home at the time to talk to the person, right? It took much more effort to be in contact with someone that you didn't live near, right? And part of the reason her mom had left her dad was that she felt very isolated in their home in Montana. And one of the things that struck me while I was reading the book is I was kind of tracing the dates, right? Our heroine is, how old is she? 26, and it's 1983. When her mom was married to her dad, that would have been the late 50s. Imagine even how much more isolating that would have been. The phone line wasn't even fully secured out to this cabin that her dad was at. So how isolating that would have been. That really struck me as someone who knows the history, who is familiar with, not familiar with the area, but in stories I'm familiar with where they were at and everything. So I definitely understood why the parents broke up and everything. But anyway, she does have a good relationship with her mom. She talks with her mom multiple times while she's there. But yeah, as the only child of this guy and the only living relative, she's there to clean it up. And while she's there, she's actually a teacher. And she ends up getting a part-time job as a substitute teacher there because the math teacher is on maternity leave. So she's now a teacher. She's teaching the sheriff's son. And she's in town to figure this out. Now, she is a ball buster, I'll tell you that. And this small town tries to be kind of judgy of her, particularly just how she is as a single woman in her 20s or whatever. And she just absolutely will not put up with it. And I love that. And I even loved it because her and Cosi, they don't get off on a completely wrong foot, I'd say. He's very attracted to her right away. She's attracted to him. But so a few odd things start happening out at the cabin and she has to call for help a few times. And it's not that he thinks she's crazy. He more so thinks she might be just a bit spooked by the area when she says she's seen someone watching her through the window. He doesn't see any tracks in the snow and he doesn't, there isn't a lot he can find right away. And so it gets her off on this case of like, you know, you're not believing me. This town is all against me. And I wouldn't say Kasi is. I think he just is like, I think she's just missing her dad. I think she's maybe seeing some things. He very much is compassionate towards her, even though they do verbally spar a few times, because she is like, is this just this hick sheriff from the small town who doesn't give a shit about my dad? But when she's saying like, I'm not sure my dad died the way you guys say so, Kasi does try to look into it more, but again, he doesn't have any evidence of it, and so he's kind of like, I'm just gonna have to let this play out until, and not to give the whole story away, I'm gonna pull it back here and end it, but until the point in the story where a shed at her father's burns down, and she has found some notes that seem coded that her father left her, talking about a just referencing a few things. And there is a reason this place is called Bluebird Gold. You know, there is possibly a treasure somewhere, who knows, and maybe someone who wants that treasure, who's to say. But at the point that this shed on the property burns down, Kasi is like, I know she didn't start this. I know she didn't do, there is something going on. And just because I can't find the evidence right now, I don't think she's safe out there, and I'm going to help her look into this. So that happens relatively early on, that he is like, I believe her, even if I think he still died by accident. She didn't start that fire to just get my attention, and he finds some evidence that it was arson. So because there's no hotel or motel in this town, she ends up moving in to stay with him while they're investigating. And she starts, they do start up a fling while she's there, and she gets closer with his son, who again is her student, but it's a really small town too. So that's the thing that made me laugh a little bit too, is how judgy people were being when it's like, where do you think single teachers find their husbands when the only eligible bachelors might be single dads in town? Like, I'm just saying, like, I get their point, but it's not like it's as much of a conflict of interest as they're trying to make it sound in a small town, but they definitely want to judge them for it. So anywho, all my thoughts on that. I really enjoyed my time with this. I gobbled this one up, but I did end up at a 4-star, a 2.5 on the spice scale for this one. But if you are liking the type of books by Catherine Cowles, by Claire Kingsley, I think you'll really like this one. It has a little less of the humorous edge to it that theirs can, but it also isn't as heavily dark as, like, sorry to, again, reference this, but like Across the Vanishing Sky by Catherine Cowles, that book is funny and charming, but the crime that they're looking into is very heavy and very dark. So she balances it with humor and with this found family that's very cozy, right? Bluebird Gold feels a little more standard. Like, I absolutely could see this as a TV movie. I probably watched this TV movie at some time, right? Of what was happening here. Crystal said he really reminded her of Tom Selleck, is what he was kind of modeled after. And as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, okay, I see it. Because he is a mustache and a sheriff. And so if that's your jam, I think you will love this. Perfectly wonderful. It's just, I'm not going to remember it long after. But I do want to read more in this series, because I love a suspense like this, that, you know, the story is pretty well contained within itself and everything. So yeah, anyway, talked about that for ages. But yeah, give it 4 stars. Do recommend. It will show up in a suspense recommendation, which, by the way, I'm thinking of doing one of those soon. It's been a hot minute since I think I've done a suspense recommendation video. Okay, next up, we of course have a fan fiction. This one is easy to talk about pretty quickly here. This one is called The Gordy Howe Hat Trick. And it's by Peace Lilies. So what I had ended up doing is I was going back through and looking at some of the fic authors that I've liked their fics before, and seeing what other ones they had written, like if they'd written ones before the ones I read, or if they were currently working on anything that I could bookmark. And Peace Lilies is one of the very first fic authors I read. They did Next Chapter, which, one of my favorite fics. That's one of the, like, After the Long Game ones. And they actually have quite a few. I've read another one by Peace Lilies too. What was the other one I read by them? Well, maybe I haven't. But I have some other ones saved. I think I hadn't read them yet. But Gordy Howe Hat Trick is just a quick little one that is about the first road trip that Shane and Ilya go on with the centaurs. And Shane has it in his head that they shouldn't share a room because they don't, I don't know, his reasoning is like he wants to keep it professional when they're at work, which fair. And also to, they're both very experienced players. Maybe one of them can be paired up with a rookie. Maybe one can be paired up, just with other people. But then they very quickly end up wanting to sneak into each other's rooms anyway. And the team is like, you guys can just share a room. Like, we get it. We love that you guys are together, right? Because it's the centaurs and they love them. So it's great. So that's the whole purpose of the Gordy Howe Hat Trick. Really quick one. Really enjoyed it. It was fun. And I think it works out to being like under 100 pages. I think it was like a 90-page fic. So a great recommendation for people who want something post long game fic. And honestly, Gordy Howe Hat Trick, the scenario in there, I absolutely could see happening in Unrivaled. Like, those are the ones I like sometimes. Sometimes I like when they go completely away from everything. And sometimes I like when I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, this might be something that happens in Unrivaled. That doesn't make me worried about spoiling anything for myself at all. I just love it. So yeah. Okay, next up though, I got through Bloodsinger. Yes, of course, I waited till it was about to come out. That is just how bad I am at it. But I had the ALC for this one, and I had just been really excited for it. But you guys know me. Other stuff comes up, and it was really hard to make myself read it, even though I did have a physical arc of this one, which is great to add to my collection. But this is book 2 in the Fire That Binds. And so this is a follow-up, or the next in the series, to Firebird. Now, first putting this out there, this is a series you need to read in order. I already had someone ask me that. Yeah, you need to start with the first one, because this is a building rebellion that's happening. And I mean, I loved Firebird, okay? Stuff got way blown up about that book that I don't agree of, but also always, I will put this out there, I'm friends with Juliet, so I am always thinking favorably of her books. You guys know that. That's my bias. That's out there, okay? But with Firebird, I genuinely loved that book, and I loved what she was doing, and I felt like she, for it being a fantasy world, she followed a lot of what history tells us it was like there. But in this world, not to, fully break it all down, but it's set in ancient Rome, and the divide of the time is that it's a magical world, and all of the ruling class are basically dragon shifters, and they subjugate the anyone less powerful than them, and they have slaves. They capture slaves in battles. They treat them awfully. There is just horrible things happening to them, okay? Now, in Firebird, that was the case of someone who was newly captured, right? That was Melina, and Julian is the nephew to the Caesar in that one. Yes, I think. And he is also a general, and so it's his group that has that attacked Alina's people, and he knew she was a witch. They knew she was a witch, and he took her as his house slave because he knew he had first choice of slaves because he was the general, and he knew what awaited her if she was captured by someone else. So he took her as his slave, but this sounds so bonkers when I say it, but he treated her well. He couldn't let her in on what he was a part of right away because, again, Julian is planning a rebellion with some of the other dragons who hate how things are going, but they've had to play along until they are positioned in the place to take over. So people had all types of feelings about that, and I feel like it was generally from people who were used to maybe more, more normal romantasies, but they felt like it was a slave master relationship, and it is in the technicality of it, but nothing happened between those two that wasn't consensual, and it was more of a fact of he just has to be her master because of the culture they're in. If he didn't, someone else would, and they would actually be treating her like a slave, right? So anyway, whatever. People say that I'm making excuses for things. It's fiction. I am obviously not making excuses for that in real life in any sense. So the whole argument just like was too much for me. But anyway, people can have whatever opinions they want. You can just not like the book or not want to read that scenario. But to say that Juliet was irresponsible or that what she had made up was wrong, I'm like, it's a fictional dark romantasy. My more problems I had with it was how much Bramble was kind of dragging their feet about saying what the trigger warnings were for the book and about warning people about what it was. Because if you're warned about what it is, then I think it's okay. You can just not like the book, but don't say that it was misrepresented, because it wasn't. And for Bloodsinger and for the finished copy of Firebird, it has a lovely author's note that says exactly what's going on. And one of the things I love about this is it says, like Firebird, Bloodsinger is a dark fantasy set in a brutal world ruled by a cruel tyrant. It is the story about female empowerment and the courage to rise up against the oppressors to fight for their freedom. And it absolutely is. It absolutely is. But it does contain dark themes, including slavery in ancient Rome, and that may be uncomfortable for some readers. Now, what it doesn't go into exact details for, and what is implied by the fact that they are slaves and anything can be done to them and it is permissible, is that the heroine in this book is dealing with severe, like, sexual abuse from her master. But again, all of that is under, slaves throughout all time and all places had to endure that, And in this book, we have Leela, who she is a sister of Melina. This whole series is about these three witch sisters, but they don't know that their siblings are alive or where they are in wherever they are. And in this case, it's particularly heartbreaking because, Leela, she doesn't know if her sisters are living, and she does not know any of what happened truly in the last book. She knows that a Roman general betrayed the ruler and escaped, okay? So she's heard that Julian escaped, but she doesn't know what he was doing or that he had Melina with him or any of those things, because she is a slave to this horrendous man who, again, knows that she's a witch, knows what her power is. So she's called Bloodsinger because she can manipulate blood, and she can make it do these different things. If she gets a drop of your blood, she can make all the blood in your body obey her. She can do whatever she wants with it. And there are other things her blood magic can do, but she hasn't discovered them yet. And also, when she uses it, she's very vulnerable, right? So it's not a thing she can continuously lose. And also, she hasn't been able to practice or really use it because the first time her power manifested was after she was captured, and she makes a grand, escape attempt, not knowing how to control her magic, and so she is subdued and beaten into submission, and she's never really tried to use her magic again because she's been so abused. And so she's abused by her master. He will put this gold bridle on her and lead her around by it. He will, offer her to his men. He will call her to his bed to rape her and abuse her. So all these things have happened. Now, where this book is starting, we don't have to, thankfully, live through a ton of that, though we will see some flashbacks through her eyes and things like that. But where we're at in the beginning of this story, we have Trajan Tiberius, who is newly elected to the Senate. And I believe he's supposed to represent the plebeians, possibly, but him and his grandfather are definitely within the upper echelons of Rome, and Valerius, who is a council of Rome, is the one that owns her. And so Trajan and his grandfather are trying to position themselves in smart places, and they actually were working with Julian, but when Julian made his escape, he didn't completely fuck them all over, but he kind of did. But he just had to take Melina and run for it because they were found out and he had to get her away. And losing him as an ally in the current situation was not great because, again, he was the nephew to this ruler. And the fact that he had turned, and had been turned for a long time, because, again, I don't want to explain everything about Firebird to y'all, but he for a very long time didn't like what was happening either. He just had to be very careful how he played it, because again, he was in a position where he could spy on the Caesar and where he could affect change from the inside. And the only reason he left was because of Melina. He would have stayed and continued to do what he could to undermine it, but he had to run with her. So Trajan has to pretend that he never cared about him, that he was as surprised as everyone else. And so that is the facade that he's had to put on. But I mean, he is glad that Julian escaped with his woman. He just is like, well, this leaves the rest of us in a troubled place. So I've shared all of that stuff. But what was amazing about this one is that very early on in this one, Trajan, he decides to take out Valerius. Okay, so the man who owns Leela. However, the night that he arrives as an assassin to take this guy out, because they have a plan to try to get someone else in that position as Council of Rome, to put someone that they choose closer to the Caesar, who isn't an evil, fucking despicable piece of human excrement like Valerius is. And when he arrives to kill this man, Melina has actually snapped. Not Melina, I'm sorry, Leela. Leela has actually snapped and killed Valerius. So Trajan comes upon her, this room soaked in blood, and he's dead. And he's like, oh shit. I mean, I wanted this guy dead, but now I found this woman. And so he very quickly has to try to get her to believe that he was there to kill Valerius, and no, he's actually working with Julian, and that he is a good guy. And of course, she has no reason to trust him, but she is weakened at the moment from expending her power to kill Valerius. And so Trajan smuggles her out of the home and takes her to his own. Not to make her live as a slave, but he does have her in hiding until he would be able to smuggle her out of the country and get her to some of his allies somewhere else. So this book is, them being kept in close quarters. And as he reveals what has been going on that she didn't know about, she's learning that there are some dragons who hate how people are being treated. She learns, what's been happening that she isn't aware of, and she of course wants to help. So yeah, and then of course this is a series of fated mates, so he's going to find out she's his mate. He is also a water dragon, which is cool. We get to learn what he can do. So he's a blue dragon. And yeah, I don't want to say too much more. I already talked enough about this one, but I really liked this one. I think it gets started a lot faster too. But you really only have the benefits of that if you read Firebird, right? And you need to read Firebird. This isn't the series where you can just hop in because you like a situation better. And what's great though is these aren't horribly long books, right? Each of these books is, this one's not quite 400 pages. I think the first one is about the same. So, it's not like saying, oh, you have to read 4 books before you get to the good stuff. I loved Firebird, and it gives you so much backstory to the situation in Rome. You get to understand how truly deadly and dangerous it is, particularly Julian, who is, the nephew of Caesar. And so he's forced to go to a lot of situations where he's seeing what's happening. There's a lot of interesting things about him that I can't share now. And then Trajan and his grandfather are wonderful. Now, again, this is a dark romantasy. There are some brutal things you will see happen in here. And there are sometimes scenarios where Trajan has to do things to keep his cover that make your stomach sick. There's particularly a scene. But none of those things he has to do involve, violating Leela or hurting her. They really have to do with a lot of gore and warlike things he has to do to prove who he is. But in Firebird, there definitely are. So I understand why some people didn't like that, but to say that it was out of place or that it was a girl deeply in love with her slave owner, it's just not what it was. I'm sorry, it's a misrepresentation of the story to me to say that. You can feel that, and I can't change your mind, but I just don't agree. You can just not like it. That's fine. But yeah, I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. And it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And also, the setup for the final book is called Death Rider. And that will be about a third sister. And holy crap, I don't want to spoil anything, but this sister I think is going to be amazing. I'll just say this, she is not in the same type of situation as either of these two ladies were. And I think the fact her book is Death Rider will maybe clue you into some of it. So, all right, then I had 2 other fanfics that I read this week. There was Courage, It Couldn't Have Come at a Worse Time by Violet Imagination. How did I pronounce that? I think I wrote it right in here. Veil of Imagination is the fic creator. So this one, this is a longer one. This one was 500 pages long, 80,000 words. And this one is a what if Shane and Ilya never got outed without their consent. Which you hear that at first and you're like, oh, well, that's good. I'm glad that didn't happen. But the question is, when would Shane have actually had the guts to tell about them? Would he have followed through with their plan or made Ilya agree to the 10-year plan that they had? Or, when would Shane have had the courage to come out? If he hadn't been forced to it, which again, I don't think is great either. I don't love that they were outed by a fan mail. But what if they were never outed by the fan mail? How long until Ilya's mental health just couldn't take it? Or how long until they couldn't be together because Shane is just too anxious and it hurts Ilya too much to wait? And so in this one, it presupposes that they don't get outed. And it actually leads to basically a breakup between the two of them. And it is heartbreaking in a lot of aspects. Now, it's called Courage, It Couldn't Have Come at a Worse Time, because Shane does have to work through his things. He needs to go to therapy. He needs to find a reason to want to be out that isn't just being with Ilya. But also, Ilya, he deserves someone to come out for him, right? And yeah, it's just it was really hard to read at some points. And this is one of those ones that I know not everyone will want to read it because of that angst to it. But I also thought it was really good because it really went into more of the mental health of Shane. We see him end up needing to get a therapist, which I hope happens in Unrivaled as is. Ilya gets a therapist like he's the only one who needs one, and I definitely don't think that's true at all. I think that Shane needs one for sure. But it definitely takes a couple of years more for Shane to be willing to do that. And Ilya, who has worked through a lot of that himself, is like, me having to only come out for you means I'm stuck in the closet when I don't want to be anymore. And so, yeah, it leads to Ilya saying, I'm done because I can't live like this and be afraid of no one ever knowing about us ever. So, yeah, that was Courage, It Couldn't Come at a Worse Time. I will leave the link for that one down below. And then I read All I Ask of You by I Said Saddle Up. And this, let me look. I think this one's going to be my favorite fic this year or this month. Oh, Shane Hollinger's Girlfriend. Love Shane Hollinger's Girlfriend as well. But All I Ask of You was one that I'd been following and it finally finished. And this one, I know when I tell you what it's about, you're going to be like, what? Why'd you read that? But guys, it was good. So this one is Shane and Ilya become the guardians to all the Pike kids because Hayden and Jackie die in a car crash. And they had made Shane and Ilya the guardians of their children because in it, Hayden only has a mom and she is in like an assisted living. because of some health issues he had, and Jackie's parents live like pretty far away, or maybe not super far away, but they just can't take on the 4 of them. And so yeah, it's really tragic. And actually the way the book starts off is that the family have been visiting the cottage, basically. Hayden was just kind of having a bit of, I don't know what we'd say, he was having a bit of some downtimes. He's thinking maybe about retiring or else switching teams, because not having Shane there, it just hasn't been great. So Jackie and the kids and Hayden have been staying at the cottage, and the night they leave, they get in an accident, and all the kids are okay, but Jackie and Hayden die. And so they have been left the kids. And so yeah, sounds super heavy, super depressing. And I'm not saying you won't cry, because I definitely cried. But the way this was written was actually so sweet. Like the will and what it said about leaving their kids to them, and just how much they've meant to their family, and that he couldn't imagine anyone else raising them but them. And then how everyone else supports them. How the parents, the grandparents, how Shane's parents immediately are like, oh my gosh, we're helping in any way we can. How they, the centaurs, how they're immediately like, we'll do whatever we can. And even how the Montreal's team, helps too. Because, Hayden was theirs, but yeah, how everybody steps up for them. So it was really beautiful. And it isn't super long. It's like 220 pages maybe. And it was just really beautiful. Like it was. And just seeing how they would like honor their parents, and how they would do their very best to take care of them. And there's also some scenes that are the very bestest, that Amber is the youngest in this, and she's just like so attached to Ilya right away. She's just his baby, and he just takes care of her so much. It's so cute. So yeah, I know everyone will want this one, but it was one of my favorites this month. I love it so much. So highly recommend if you want a bit of a more painful one, but definitely doesn't hurt as much as some of the plane crash ones I've read. I'll tell you that. So, and some people don't even like Hayden. So they really don't have as much of a problem with him being dead as I, but Jackie didn't deserve it. Okay. Jackie didn't deserve it. My reread of Where We Bloom by Kristen Proby. I annotated this for my patron. This is my special edition copy that somehow got beat up a little bit. But this is book 3 in the Blackwells of Montana. And this one is about Billy and Connor. And Connor is Skyla's older brother and is an Irish business mogul. He's a billionaire, a hotelier, and he, of course, has been coming to Bitterroot Valley because his sister's living there now. And Billy is, one of the Blackwells, and she owns a bookshop in town. And we learned that these two actually ran into each other and had a one-night stand in the beginning. She's like in the city or something. But he had like come into the bookstore actually before he knew who she was. So this was before, like, Skyla had just moved there, but like she wasn't dating. Does she date Bridger, or who does she date? Now I can't remember. But anyway, they weren't together yet, and they had a one-night stand, and she was cool with that. She loved it. It was hot. Then we skip ahead, and she now knows who he is, and we've seen that in book 2. You like see them like dancing around each other. But he was the one who said it was only a one-night stand. He didn't ask for her phone number. He didn't even get her last name when they had it. And again, she was okay with that. She wanted to have a fling. But she doesn't anymore. Like, she doesn't want to, she was okay with a fling, but she doesn't want to just be a booty call for anyone. And so she's been really kind of pushing him away, and he's having to decide if he wants it to be more, because he had been married and divorced once, and he just thinks he's too much about business. But he is planning to redo the resort in the town, and is there all the time. And he decides he wants something with her. And he ends up running into her when she's shopping in one of the big towns. She will go once a month to go thrifting and to have a day to herself. And he ends up like driving her home. And then there's also an event where she gets drugged at a club or at the bar, and he comes across her almost being assaulted by this guy. And then after he takes care of her, he's like, okay, I don't ever want to be away from you. So he makes it known that he wants to be with her. So I really love this one. And though I think it still kind of sits as one of my favorites in this series, again, one of the things that always becomes clear about her books is that she gets them together so early, and then the whole rest of the book is just them fucking and saying they love each other. Like, without fail in the book, they're going to say they love each other. They're going to sleep together multiple times, which is fine. I'm not judging that. I just mean, like, they're going to say they're obsessed by page 100. They're going to say they love each other by page 200. Then there's going to be something suspenseful around page 300, and then it wraps it up, right? Like, that is literally how, like, all of these go. But I do still like the relationship in this one the most, because she does continue to push him away until he starts proving that he's serious. And, you know, they exchange phone numbers, and now he's planning dates, and he's like, you told me you wanted to see more of me than just in the bedroom, and so I'm doing that. I want something with you. And I really like seeing how he proves it. So this one didn't annoy me as much as some of the previous ones with that. But this is another one that, like, it's 100 pages too long. It peaks so early. And then there's, like, the only, like, little drama in this one is, like, his ex-wife feels hurt that he fell in love with someone else, which is stupid. She's married to someone else in this book. She doesn't even do anything horrible or anything. She literally just is a little jealous and says something that hurts Billy's feelings. And then, but Billy doesn't take it out on him because she's like, I'm not letting some other woman do the blah, blah, blah. So, like, there's no character growth besides him deciding he wants a relationship. There wasn't even any suspense in this one. So you're just like, it's just sweet. It's another small town romance, but at a billionaire who wants to spend tons of money on her, and they have to have a few discussions about how much money he wastes. Like, that's it. So, still very sweet. And again, I'm having a pleasant time rereading the books in that series. I don't have any problem with it. But it's just funny when I reread them, because the first time I read them, I do get swept away by it and see how sweet it is. And in this one, it was just like, there was no stakes to this one at all. Like, none. And that can be a little bit disappointing. All right, then I read Souls in Ruin by Jacqueline White. All right, this is one that I had on the annotated pre-order from January. So I needed to read and annotate this one. And my patron actually sent me her book so that I could do that. And Souls in Ruin, I had been seeing in places. I've seen people be reading it. And this one I actually believe is pulled for TradPub. So that also means there's like no date for books for the next book at all, which was definitely like a bummer to get to the end and know I couldn't know what was going to happen next. But this book has, oh man, there's so much to set up for this one. But also at the same time, I have no idea what this world is at all. I don't know. I was very, you know, it got to a certain point in the book where most of this book takes place in one location. And I'm trying not to be cynical about it, but I also wonder, I'm like, well, that is conveniently easy for the author because they don't have to explain anything when we're not interacting with anything. But this had a very strong start. Let me say that. We have, how do we say her name? Muriel. And she is the bastard oldest child of the king in this land. And I believe it said she's 26. And she has 6 half siblings, with her father had a fling with her mother, and then the mother dropped her off on her father's doorstep. He was already married to someone else, and she was pregnant, and her mother was never seen again. And so the father, we're told, reluctantly kept her and did raise her as a princess, but she's the scorn of everybody there. The queen absolutely hates her. Her oldest half-sibling hates her, but she loves her youngest half-sibling. I'll talk about her in a second. And she just is getting by, basically. She has a little fling that's happening with the palace guard, but she's told him nothing serious will happen between them because she doesn't believe in love because of how she's been treated in this kingdom. Love isn't real. She can never expect it, and she has freely. We'll find this out. And again, I'm not judging her for this. The power that she's taken for herself is that she is pretty promiscuous, how she explains it, not me, in that she has slept with many men in the kingdom because that's the only place that she feels powerful, is when she chooses to have those. So if people are going to call her names, she's going to be those names, but she's going to get power for it. Okay? So that's her choice. Let me just say that. But, again, she doesn't really care for anyone in the kingdom except for her. She has a best friend named, I think Isolde is her best friend, who's another noblewoman's daughter who doesn't hate her for her being a bastard. And her youngest half-sibling, whose name is Lisa, who's 3 years old, and she's just the sweetest. And she doesn't know that her half-sibling is a bastard or any of these bad things about her. She just loves her half-sister. And then there's Darius, who she has a fling with, but again, we don't care about him that much or anything. So those are the only things she cares about in this kingdom. And in the beginning of this book, she gets called into her father's study and told that there is this evil being that they've been doing war against, who is demanding a marriage alliance to like end the feud. And Muriel is the one that he's demanding. Not the king's eldest legitimate daughter, but his bastard daughter. He's willing to trade her for this. And at first, Muriel is like, no, you don't even pay attention to me. You don't care about me. And you're just going to hand me off to this guy, sacrifice me to our enemy for peace. And her father immediately is trying to guilt her with, yes, because you'll save all these other lives if you do it. You'll save your little sister. They immediately know all of her pain points and pushes her into it. And he does reveal a little bit more about her mother at this time and actually gives her a crown that he had made for her mother. And he reveals this little piece that he actually wanted to be with her mother, but she had been with him and disappeared and then only left him with the baby. And though he was already married to his wife now, he would have left her to be with the mom. So he says, anyway, by the way, I'm just saying, this is what the king's saying. Like, that's supposed to make Muriel feel better now, or make her feel like, oh, but I do really care. The reason I didn't pay attention to you is you look so much like your mother, which was a classic thing to say. I'm mocking the king, not the book, by saying this, by the way. I'm mocking the king, not the book, by saying that. So, he tells her tomorrow the guy's showing up and you're going to marry him. And so this guy's name is like, I no longer have this book, obviously, because I had to send it off to the patron. But Valen is his name, and he's this blood king, and he has all these he has all these different titles, okay? But he's this big baddie. But when she meets him, she immediately feels drawn to him, and they have a moment alone before they get married, and he's making sure that she actually wants to go through with it, says, like, my wedding ceremonies are a little different than ones you've seen, and she ends up learning. I don't think he tells her this. I think a maid tells her this, who's getting her ready for the wedding, that there'll be a blood oath they have to exchange, and that is stronger than death to the people of Valen's people, and you'll be, like, bound to him forever and all this stuff. And she's like, okay, well, that's exciting for me. So, I'm going to tell you the big twist here, so skip if you want, but this is the setup of this story, and so I'm going to tell you what is going to happen here, but you should skip if you don't want to know anything about this. Okay, skip to the next book I'm going to say, but most of my issues with the book stem from this twist, so that's why I'm going to tell you what it is. Okay, so the twist in this is that she marries him. They have their wedding night. It is a like fuck fest. Okay, these they have these power dynamics too while they're fucking. She feels this great connection to him, but during the last time that they are actually like having sex, she starts hearing screaming happen. And he's like, no, like, it's nothing. Keep going. And literally while he's fucking her, his people are capturing all of the royal court and slaughtering people everywhere. So she stumbles out of the bridal chamber to try to find Lisa and her friend. And she discovers Lisa in the nursery. And I was really scared here because I'll tell you, one of the trigger warnings for this is death of children. Okay, that is a trigger warning on the front page. I knew this book was going to be bloody and heavy. And I'm like, oh my God, did they kill Lisa? Like, what is happening? But no, Lisa was hiding in a hidey hole in her nursery. And so Muriel gets Lisa and Isolde away, and they're riding away. And then she gets dragged into the throne room, and the whole rest of her family, her father, stepmother, and 5 other siblings, from the ages, it says the youngest prince is 11 to 17. There's 4 brothers. She has 11 to 17. And her half-sister is 25, like the same age as her, because that's the one that the queen was pregnant with when all this went down with her. And we find out that Valens is actually was a god who had been taken prisoner by her father and had been tortured in the dungeon for years. And he escaped, and now, was this enemy against her father, and her father made now a deal with him. I don't know. It's all very confusing. I still don't understand how he had escaped and was able to make himself an army so quickly I don't know. Maybe I missed that part. I don't know. But the point is, this was all like a trick. And his plan is to torture Muriel as he was tortured. But first, he slaughters her whole family in front of her, starting with her father on down the line. He literally slits the throats of these children. So there's our harm to children. He kills all of her young siblings. Now, they don't even have names except for the oldest half-sister, so I guess we're not supposed to fully feel the horror of this, but it's okay because the baby wasn't killed, but we killed all these children who have nothing to do with this, okay? Yes, the queen and her half-sister are mean to her, but their throats are slit and they're slaughtered here because of what the father did, right? So immediately that changes the tone, because she's literally, not to be crass, but she's literally still got this guy's semen inside of her, and he's just killed her whole family in front of her. And he takes her captive, and he says, your father's going to have to watch what I did to you. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Like, you just killed him now. So what? And he's like, no, you don't understand the power that I have. Your father's soul will never be able to leave here. He's going to have to watch everything I do to you. There's some explanation about that, but basically the father's soul will not get to cross to the other side because of something that Valen has done. So he's going to be trapped within this kingdom and have to watch what's done to his daughter. So literally, that is the beginning of this. And yes, she gets taken to the prison, and daily she gets chained up, and then, Valen will come down and he will torture her, trying to make her cry and scream. And he does horrific things to her. He's called the Blood King because he can do things with his blood to her. And he tortures her. And he also tortures her with the fact that you loved having sex with me. You're still attracted to me now. And all these things. Now, the other piece to this, though, is there is another prisoner in this jail as well, in the cell next to her, in fact. And there's actually a point in the very beginning of it where she's almost killed, I believe, by the torture that Valen does. And this other being in the prison actually makes a deal with Valen that he removes 2 of his chains, apparently he has lots of chains on him, in exchange for him healing Muriel, and he is able to do it, but in exchange he has to take a sliver of her soul, because that's the cost of healing. But yeah, still daily, Valen will come to torture her, and she will sometimes be talking with this being who he identifies himself as Death to her. He says he has a real name, but he hasn't been called this name in so many centuries that Death is the name he can call her, or she can call him. So that is the next 60% of this book, is the different types of torture that Valen does, okay? And she's getting to know this other prisoner, and he may be becoming obsessed with her as well. There are even times where Muriel, she tries some different things to manipulate Valen, because she has nothing to lose, truly, like nothing to lose. So she does try different mind games, different, I'll say it, sex games with him. And there's even times then where when they don't go well, Death will mock her and say, you know, she should have known better and she deserves what's happening to her. He will say these things. And it just was a lot, you guys. It was a lot. It's supposed to feel like a lot. Like, I get it. Again, all the trigger warnings are there for this. But what didn't work for me, and this is hard because this is the first in I think it'll be a trilogy. I don't know. This is the first book by Jacqueline White, by the way, debut novel. It was written very well. I was so compelled into this story. I was sucked in. But I was so angry at both of these creatures, both Valen, who, I don't know, people see as a valid love interest. I fucking don't. I hated him the whole way through. Like, literally at the end, there's people making this a love triangle, and I guess it was, but Valen is a manipulative, sadistic fucking cretin, okay? I hate him. I hate him fully. For what we find out about him and like what he is, to hold this girl's father's crimes against her, to manipulate her, assault her, abuse her, make her care about you, abuse her some more. I hate him. And I will actually be disgusted if he's potentially a love interest later on. Okay? I hate him. Now, Death, I don't know yet. Okay? I don't know yet. There were some, the thing that redeemed this book for me was the ending of this book. It's a great twist. There was a few things I was picking up throughout the book that I was like, okay, and I didn't know what Death was or who Death was, but I knew a few pieces that were falling into place based on the information we were getting, and I was like, this is going to be good. And when it happens, I was like, okay, I'm hooked in. So this is why I'm conflicted, right? Like, the author, she took me on the journey that she wanted to take me on. That is for sure. I just don't see the purpose in the type of torture and the extended torture that the heroine went through, okay? I think it could have been achieved at the same level with a lot less gore and violence and the eroticism that is put into it. I found it disgusting because it was all gaslighting and games and torture. And again, Death even gaslights her at different points by her being like, well, you should have known better. How is she supposed to have known better? This woman literally has no clue what she's been thrown into, or the secrets that parents have been keeping, or what purpose she has of this. To assume that she should know the games and rules of gods and the myths about them and which things are bad for her soul and which things aren't is absolutely fucking stupid. The book hasn't told us that she should know those things. So then to treat her like she's a stupid, ignorant girl because she's trying to survive using her body, which has already been established, that's what she does. Like, she was doing that when she was a princess. You know, she was using her body to find comfort and to manipulate men already. So when she's in this situation and she knows that this horrendous creature is attracted to her and wants to have sex with her, why wouldn't she use that to her? Like, why wouldn't she? She has nothing else to use. And then when she needs to make trades and things to survive, she then gets chastised about like, well, you shouldn't have done that. You're making mistakes you can't undo. What else is she supposed to do? What the fuck else is she supposed to do? She doesn't know any of this. She's just trying to live. And when a new power awakens within her or something, it's like, let me use it, right? So this was very interesting. And when I get to the end of this, I want to be clear. I completely understand why this is a 5-star read for so many people and why it's a favorite. Because there were shocking things, there were shock value things, and well-planned shocking things that you can see they weren't just a twist. Like, they were planned the whole time. And I want to know what happens next. I absolutely want to know what happens next. But there's two things that like keep me from this being that loved by me. One, I think this needed to be edited down how much torture we have to sit through. I also think that we needed more explanation of this world. I know nothing. Like, so I said in the beginning, all of this takes place in, all of this takes place basically in the dungeon. We get some pieces of backstory about the world as she talks with Death and with Valen at different points, but I don't know anything about what type of world we're in, if magic is normal, if anyone else has it, where like any of that stuff. And for 640 pages of book, I think I should know some of those things. I suspect because of how this first book ends and how the world will be opening up, that we'll get that later on. But if the only thing in a story I have to go on is the gore and the trauma that this woman lives through, and literally it was the epitome of an abusive relationship, which again, it's not the same comparisons because this is fantasy, and by that I mean like it's gonna have, you know, hyper extended things, right? Like over the top things. But literally Valen, that is what he is. He tortures her, he sexually assaults her, he abuses her, and then leaves her there like a rag doll for his guards to clean her up. And then he comes back the next day and does it again. And there's still supposed to be some romantic feelings there at the end. Like, I don't know, anyone who's rooting for Valen, I need you to tell me why, because he's disgusting to me. Like, I'm sorry, I'm calling it. He's disgusting to me. Like, this isn't the same as anything else. Like, he had no reason to torture a human girl like this because he was tortured by her father. Like, it's so disgusting. I hated it. So yeah. But I didn't hate this book as a whole. That's the thing. So, I mean, you're supposed to hate torture. You're supposed to hate gore and assault and all these things. And then the final button is that Death, once we learn some stuff about him, he explains that he was gaslighting. He doesn't say gaslight, of course, but he was saying cruel things to her about what she was living through on purpose. So that did alleviate some of my anger about Death, is once you learn why he did some of the things with her that he did, I like him more. He's definitely the love to me, he's the only love interest at the end of this. And if Valen is a potential actual rival later on, I would probably rip a book in half because there's no forgiveness to me. The slaughtering of 5 innocent children, the torture, rape, and assault of her. Because yeah, I'm going to keep calling it rape, even though she initiates some of their sexual content. Like, she's doing that from a prison cell to get him to be nicer to her. So he rapes and assaults her while she's chained in the dungeon. For what purpose? So yeah, it was heavy, but I want to know what happens next. So the author has me there. I just think 150 pages of torture could have been cut out of this. This was torture porn, for sure. Absolutely horrendous things that are done. And because it's magical, he can do it. But he literally loses his temper at one point and almost drains her of blood. And she's forced to bargain away part of her soul to live. It's very much like Feyre in the dungeon, except if Tamlin was directly the one doing the torturing, and then she had to make a deal with Rhys to live, right? Like, you would just never forgive him for that. So anyway, let's move along. I gave it 3.5 stars rounded down, though. I gave it 3.5 rounded down to 3 because I could not give this a 4. With all the 5 stars that I had, I could not give it a 4. But I don't think it's as bad as a 3 because I think a lot of it is just choices by the author. And I do want to read the next book. So I understand why people loved it. I just felt sick for most of this book. And I'm not at a place where I like feeling that way anymore these days. I don't want to feel sick while I'm reading a book. So it was intense. But again, my final statement, I understand why people love it, and I'm not shaming anyone who loved it. I want to know what happens next. But I just couldn't give this a 4 because I also don't ever want to read this again. And a 4-star means like I kind of would. So it's a 3.5 and a 2.5 on the spice scale. But know that aside from pretty much the first sexual encounter, most of that is non-consensual or dubious consent. Okay, let's end on a happier one quick here. I last night finished the ALC I had for All for Love by Willow Astor. This was narrated by Austin Stone and Isabel Ruther, a duet narration for this one. And this is book 3 in the Windy Harbor series. Is that the series? I don't know. But this one is another like forbidden romance. It's a young single mom. And this is Dylan Whitman. And he's actually on a flight back from California to Minneapolis. And this woman falls in his lap. And she passed out because she hadn't eaten enough that day. And her name is Dahlia. And Dahlia is actually returning from California because she dropped her daughter off with the dad. And she's going home for 2 weeks before she'll go back and pick her daughter up. And she's actually only like 22. And she had this baby with a colleague of her dad's, which is actually very disturbing to me because she was probably 19 when she started that relationship with him. If her daughter is 2.5 now and it says she's 22, I think that's how young she is. Maybe it was she was in the relationship at 22. And so now, I don't know, I maybe missed that. But either way, her and Dylan end up clicking on this flight and they end up going on a date when they get back. And then they kind of get snowed in together because it is Minneapolis and they get stuck together. And then she ends up getting a call from her daughter who, like, the dad had let the little girl talk to her mom. And she's like, "Mommy, come and get me." Which just breaks my fucking heart. And so she's like, "I'm coming back." And so Dylan ends up agreeing to go with her, or offering to go with her, not agreeing. She doesn't ask him to do that because he still has his home there. He, of course, was going to be going to Windy Harbor to help with the resort there and everything. But instead, he goes back with her because he's like, "Well, you guys can stay at my house with me." But basically before they leave, though, they end up figuring out that their families are enemies. So this is another case, kind of like the first book in the series. Like there's 2 feuding families in here, but it's mostly one guy who's holding the grudge. So we find out that her name is Dahlia Granger, and she's Bruce Granger's daughter. So we are well familiar with Bruce if you've been reading along in the series and what a turd he is. Absolute turd. Milo was actually his nephew, and the first book in the series was Milo's romance with one of the Whitman daughters. And Milo, so Milo is actually her cousin. But yeah, they end up deciding that their chemistry is just too good to just walk away from it. But they're going to keep their relationship a secret, especially because he's not quite moved back to Minnesota yet. He's just traveling currently back and forth. He owns a business in California. And so most of this book is their like secret relationship. But I really liked it. It covers a good amount of time, and it makes sense because she's making pretty frequent trips to California to let her daughter see the dad. And she actually works for her dad's business as well. And he's very hard on her. We don't like Bruce. He's an absolute asshat. But it's just a lot of drama with him, let's just say, for sure. So anyway, yeah, it's a romance between the two of them. And of course, eventually, you know, the dads are going to find out, but the Whitmans absolutely love her and the little girl, and it's a happily ever after all around. So I love this one. I really didn't have any problems with it. I just love Willow Astor's books. So this one was 5 stars for me. It was especially nice after the book I had just finished, which had left me really like hurt, you know, just in despair kind of after that one. So yeah, I gave this 5 stars. It's a 3 on the spice scale, and its cuteness abounds, basically. So there you go. Those are the things that I read this week. Let me know what you think about them. And I can't wait to talk to you about them in the comments. So thanks so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.